Well, hello everyone. Back with another Costanzo movie review, and this is episode 2, and this is my wife Rachel. And last time we did a movie review on My Country, the New Age, and we discussed different themes of that episode and the Christian perspective. And what we want to do, obviously, with this vlog, and this is only the second time we're doing this, is really we're trying to introduce Christ into different series, different movies, even books that we read, and then we talk about it, we review it, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you guys and be informative, and you guys would check out some of the movies and some of the series that we've looked at. So this time in this review, it's another Korean drama. Now I know a lot of people will bash me for this because I used to say that I didn't like Korean dramas, but actually Korean dramas are the new rage now, and I'm part of it. I'm getting on the train, and so we saw another Korean drama that was released in 2019 called Stove League. Stove League. And for those of you that are not avid baseball fans, hot stove, or the hot stove season, which they like to call it, is the off season for baseball, for baseball activities. The players don't play games, but you see the behind the scenes of the GM and the operations in all the various ways for the baseball team to make their team better. And so Stove League is basically a series that really captures that part of the season.
Which is very interesting because a lot of people don't know a lot about the business side of baseball, um, because you see it as a sport, and when you're young you play a sport, and it's okay. I got this team. I have a coach. We go out and we play. If, like, whether you're in little league or whatever it is. So you can almost kind of think that like the major leagues is that way. It's just like, okay, there's this team. They have their coach. They have their field. But it's really like a whole business, and there's a ton of people behind the scenes, and seeing it from, and it may sound like, dry, saying we're going to look at the business side of baseball, but it's actually, in some ways I feel like it breathes a lot of life into the sport, because you realize,
Yeah.
like, this isn't just people playing a game for fun. This is a whole group of people's life. Like, this is their livelihood. And so the stakes are higher for them than just like, I'm going out to play a little league game.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
And so Stove League picks up, and basically it entails this team called the Dreams. Now, the Dreams have been in last place for the last 5 years. They haven't been a very successful organization in the Korean professional baseball league. Now, I didn't even really know that Korea had a professional baseball league, but they do, along with many other countries in the world now. It's a global sport. But it follows this team called the Dreams, and they're struggling. And so the GM steps down, the general manager, the one that calls all the shots, makes all the trades, picks up the free agents. He says, in the first episode, he basically steps down and says, I've failed. I've been unsuccessful for the past 4 or 5 years. I'm going to step down and let someone else take the reins. And so the CEO and the owner of the Dreams, this man called Kwan, and we'll talk about Kwan a little bit later, but he goes ahead and he starts the interviewing process, and basically hires someone that doesn't really have any familiarity with baseball, but he's this man that they call General Bak, is
Baeksang
Bang Sang Soo, but he's successful in other organizations. He took a wrestling team all the way to the championships. He took, what was it? Was it another
handball.
handball?
Yeah.
He took a handball professional team from the bottom and then brought him to the top. So his portfolio was basically saying that he was a winner. So the owner hired Bak Sun So, and he doesn't really know much about baseball, but you're going to begin to see that he's a very wise man, and he has aspirations to bring the Dreams back into contention. And so that's
Okay.
that's basically a general summary of the series,
Hmm.
and that kind of lays out in episode 1.
So, what were first? We'll talk about just like our first impressions of it, our like initial kind of reactions now that we finished it. We just finished it last week, so it's fresh in our mind. So first impressions. How would you quickly sum up your first, or
You go
I
ahead.
guess first impressions, like when you first
Yeah.
started watching it and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Okay. Well,
What kind of show it is?
yeah. Well, first off,
Kind
I'll
of
say
deal.
this. I looked up this show. Sometimes when you're looking for a series or something, you just look online and say, okay, you type in the Google, what are some good series, or high rated series, and this show called Stove League popped up a bunch of times, and because I used to play baseball, and obviously I'm a baseball fan, that immediately drew my attention. The camera's moving a little bit.
Mm.
So, um, so basically, I just put it on, and Rachel was a little bit more hesitant, I think, in
Yeah.
initially. We just started to watch it, and she's like, "Oh, this is baseball," and
Which I
you
love
know,
baseball.
she
I mean,
does.
I'm a sports person, but I just thought, okay, you're gonna give 16 episodes about the inner workings of a baseball's management. It sounded very dry.
Yeah,
So I was pleasantly surprised
yeah.
by how good it was. Um,
First impressions, though, I will say this:
yeah.
they made the baseball organization, the cinematography, the sets. I mean, the baseball stadium looked gorgeous. From the shots from the outside, from the inside. The show, the series opens up with the last game of the season for the Dreams, and so the fans are in the stands and they're playing baseball, and I think that it was one of the best one of the best choreographed baseball scenes and baseball games that I had seen in any movie. So they did a really good job of making it seem real,
Mm.
and the organization itself, like you look behind the scenes and it looked like a real baseball team and an organization. And so the set pieces were all impressive. So I was like, all right, this may have what it takes. So we stuck with it a little bit. What were your first impressions?
Um, well, so we first started watching it, and I was just, okay, I'll watch this, because Grant wants to watch it,
Yeah,
and, so I'll see if I can get into it with him. And honestly, after the first episode, I was already intrigued by it, and I'll say that was largely because of the main girl in it, who's played by Park Eun Bin, who, if any of you guys watch K dramas, you probably know her because she's become pretty popular recently because she was in the drama Attorney Woo, Extraordinary Attorney Woo, and she played an autistic lawyer, and she did a fantastic job. I mean, she seemed like she was an autistic character when she played that part. Well, in this movie, she's not autistic, and so I was taken aback by
yeah,
how, oh wow, she's she's this totally different person, and I liked her immediately. I think that I personally connected with her because she reminded me a little bit of my own personality, kind of like a little bit tomboyish. She was passionate about baseball. She works in the management, in management for the Dreams, and she's passionate about baseball because she used to go to the park with her dad as a kid, and she kind of took that passion from her dad. And I'm someone who loves sports, who played a lot of sports when I was young. I played softball, and I got into baseball for a while. Love basketball, those things, and so I just related to her as a character
yeah.
pretty quickly, immediately. And then also um, Nam Kung Min, who plays Baeksang Soo, who is the general manager, the new general manager. He was immediately intriguing to me, I thought. We'll get into a lot more about him because he's really, I think, he's the main guy of the show, really. Kind of is the show in a lot of ways. But he was intriguing because he was very understated. And the show was understated, which if you've seen Korean dramas, that's not normal, I would say, for a
No.
lot of Korean dramas. because they're dramas, and so they tend to like lean a little bit into the drama. This one I would say overall was an understated drama, and I mean that in a really good way.
Yeah. And I would say this, if you liked Moneyball,
Mm.
starring Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill, it's basically kind of the rift of that story. Now, not exactly, but it's behind the scenes, and it immediately grabbed my attention when they hired this new general manager, and all of a sudden now all of these issues and all of these, he's got to figure it out. He's got to figure out how he can make this team a winner through trades and through free agents and firing some people, hiring better people. Just very interesting. So if you liked Moneyball, you're really gonna like this.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say, and Moneyball is one of my favorite movies, which is kind of funny because I'm not a math person. And I love sports, but I'm not really a huge sports watching person. I love playing it or watching people play it live, but I'm not super into following teams. I have been in the past, but it was a little bit hard for me. It was a little bit of an emotional roller coaster that I had to get off. But that being said, I loved Moneyball, and I think it's because there's deeper themes below it. It's not just about sports. There's things that everybody can get from it, and I think that's what I would say about this show. Even if you don't like sports, even if you don't like baseball, I've read a lot of people who have done like just their own personal little review, written a review on this show, said, I don't know anything about baseball, and I love this show. And how intrigued they were to learn more, and because it's a character-driven show, and it's about characters, and it's about
relationships,
and it's about what do you do when you come across obstacles in your life, and how do you see that through. So that being said, let's really quickly just go over. We don't want to get into details since this is the spoiler-free review, but we'll go into good things we liked about it, and then we'll go into like maybe some weaknesses that we saw. So what are some pluses for you?
Some pluses for me, I would probably say the acting by the two lead roles are just fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know their names.
Park Hoon Bin and Nam Koon Min.
Yeah, they were both fantastic.
Yeah.
He was
immediately.
Yeah, he was very subtle with his acting chops and his conversations. He's just a very cool customer, very smart, very calculated. But there's more than meets the eye with him. He hides everything.
Yeah.
But he does a really good job of just portraying this person who he's a calculated mind, and he knows what he needs to do, and he doesn't get swept by emotions, and he just does a really good job of delivering his lines. The script is really good, very good writing, and she's wonderful as well. They're both really good, especially when they're dialoguing together, when they're in dialogue, going back and forth, and they kind of create this bond. So I feel like the two leads really were fantastic. They were perfect casting. I think the casting was great too, just from all the players, the coaches, the CEO, the other cast members. I really felt like they just picked the perfect cast, and was very believable for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, mentioning the two main characters, like we said before, and like he was saying, that they were immediately interesting, and I mean, like, pretty much immediately. Like, after the first episode, I wanted to watch the second, and it wasn't really because necessarily the plot. It was more of like, these characters are interesting. But that being said, I was surprised by how, like you said, how likable and how developed all of the characters of the show are. And I think that's what makes this show so strong. And believe it or not, it actually, it was one of the nominations for the Baeksang Award in 2019, which is the like Kdrama of the Year award. And it was actually up against Crash Landing on You, which we've already kind of talked about this before, but Crash Landing on You so far has been like our top K-drama that we've seen. So it was up against Crash Landing on You, and it actually won the award for 2019.
Wow, so it won over Crash Landing on You?
It won over Crash Landing on You.
Wow.
So that could be surprising when you hear about the plot. Like but okay, so it's about this, management, baseball management,
Yeah.
It sounds very dry. But if you see it I think you'll understand why.
Yeah.
Because it's so tight, it's so solid. The script is tight. It's
Yeah.
like the characters are so well developed, never overdone. They're just
Yeah.
like perfectly integrated all
Yes.
throughout it. I don't know how to really explain it.
I think the pace too, like the
Yes.
pace, they had perfect pace with the
Yeah.
show. It didn't get bogged down too much into one thing and just like for episode and episode and episode. It kept everything fresh. Each episode there was a new conflict, a new problem that happened. That occurred that Bach had to sift through, and then the conflict is bringing out these other characters as well, and what their intentions, what their motivations are. And another thing that I liked about the show is that it just wasn't black and white. This person's good, this person's bad. Who they are. It was the show brings about conflicts, and through those conflicts you see those characters and how they interact and what their motivations are.
Yeah, it's like very real world.
Yeah, it's not okay. I know this person's good, so they're always going to do good, and I know this person's bad because he did that, and he's bad throughout the whole show. But you figure out more to a lot of these characters' backstories, and it's just not black and white. So that's what made the show very refreshing to me. It's like, oh wow, okay, I didn't know that about that character, and you're learning more and more about that person. But nothing ever got stale because they kept the pace.
They
going.
did, and they also like constantly had unexpected turns.
Yeah.
There was always like an unexpected twist or turn. We can't get into what those are yet.
Yeah.
But throughout each episode, there was always like some new thing, some unexpected thing, some twist to what you maybe thought or about a character or whatever. So yeah, I would say those really strong things. The characters, the script was really good, really really good. I would say the difference, because it's kind of hard when you're thinking about Crash Landing on You and you're trying to find like why did this one beat out Crash Landing on You. I think personally Crash Landing on You, I don't know what you would say, but it has a little bit more like just like heart and emotion, like it's very intense on the emotional side of things.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say? Like more so? Although not to say this one isn't at all, but
Yeah, not to get into too many details, obviously, but what you'll see in this show is it doesn't have a romance.
Yeah.
There's not a
Yeah.
there's no romance flourishing between the main two characters. They just stuck with baseball, and so and the activities of a baseball off season and the conflicts that can happen, and
Yeah.
that's the show.
yeah.
And so they didn't really entertain romance, and because of that I think some people may seem like, well, it wasn't that emotional. I mean, obviously Crash Landing on You and other shows, they have a romance, and
It's not
people
life or
get kind
death, I
of people
guess.
get kind of swept away.
Yeah.
But this is more of a reality based show. Gives you day to day what it looks like behind the scenes of a baseball team. I
Yeah.
find that incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
And even if you're not a fan of baseball, I mean, you learn a whole lot about, wow, okay, I didn't realize that all of this stuff happens in the off season of this, couple of months span.
And I would say
really
it
interesting.
is like the story is romantic. It's not a romance, but it's a romantic story. Like there's romance in the story. It's just not romance between a girl and a guy. Although there's just, I think friendship is huge in it. Camaraderie, which sounds really dry, but the show does not make it dry.
Yeah.
I feel like it breathes life into that idea.
Yeah.
So anyways, so we talked about the good things. Some weaknesses. Well, I just wanted to say too really quickly that another reason why I could see why I would beat out Crash Landing on You is it doesn't have, there's no moments that you feel like it drags. And there's no moments that feel like, sometimes Crash Landing on You will drag out like an emotional moment or a flashback, or it'll go into these scenes with these women that seems kind of off to the side. It doesn't have any of that. It's very streamlined, and like when you're watching it, you never feel like, can we get on like with it? Like it just, I don't know. I feel like the pacing is actually better than Crash Landing on You, and I think that might be one of the reasons why I kind of beat them out
Yeah.
for the award.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think it's just they're two really good shows, but they're different shows, and this one was executed pretty much flawlessly in terms of script and pace and character development. And by the end of the show, you're really all bought in, emotionally to these characters, and so that's what makes it so impactful. And I think whoever was voting, on that, felt that as well, and they decided to give that award to Stove League, which is surprising but not shocking.
Yeah. I think I was shocked more like halfway through, and then when I read that, and then when I finished it, I wasn't as shocked. But anyways, weaknesses. I think the biggest weakness is it's like both. It's a good thing, but it's also a little bit of a weakness. So they don't show a lot of baseball itself, like actual games, which is actually part of the I think is good about the show, because the show is like, okay, this show is not like a sports show where you're just going to watch baseball games. It's not like Remember the Titans. They're not going to have the sports music and the emotional. This is a show about people behind the scenes, working to make all the work that it actually takes to win. And it's not just the baseball players. It's a lot of other people behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But that being said, we both felt like, especially like towards the end, we would have liked to just see like a good game.
Don't spoil it for
well, I'm not. I'm just saying we would have liked to have seen more playing. More baseball playing.
Yeah. Weaknesses? Okay. I'll give you one weakness that I saw, especially the female lead, Lee Se-young. Her character was great. In the first episode, she is the head of baseball operations, and so she's really the passion or the emotion of the show, because she loves this team so much. She wants to see it as well. She was a fan of the team when she was young. She has ties because her father worked for the team in some capacity. I think he kind of worked the kind of
not her father.
No, not her father.
He just liked to go.
He
to
was
the
just a
games.
fan, right?
Yeah.
He was just a fan, but he ended up dying, and so that was kind of like the one emotional tie or remembrance.
Which was cool because it wasn't just a job for her, which helped you understand why she would like stick with it through thick and thin, because it was like she really loved the team. It wasn't just like this is her job.
But after that first episode, you don't really get any of her backstory at all. I would have liked to seen her character be developed a little bit more. Who was she? How did she get to that position? Her family. I mean, I know she stays with her mom, but I wish they would have just delved into her backstory a little bit more, because she is a very, very interesting character, and she's really the heart of the show. Yeah, Bach, the GM, is, he's the main player because he's the GM, so you kind of see the show through his eyes, but she's really the passion and the emotion, because anytime Bach, may have a decision to cut a certain player or do something in regards to maybe firing somebody, she always comes back around to like kind of the emotional part of, hey, well, what about this guy, and what about this person? He served with this team for
That's a good way of putting it, because I think if you didn't have her, it would kind of be like like this kind of stoical guy, like, so she adds like a lot of the passion to it.
Right.
Not that he's not passionate, because he is, which is part of the interesting thing about his character.
He is, but
unfolding
but for him, he's coming into this team. He has no ties to the Dreams at all.
Yeah.
He has no ties to the Dreams.
From a business.
He comes from a business. He's just trying to do what he has to do in order to make it a winner, and he's willing to cut whoever. He doesn't know the past players all that well, but she does, and so she kind of helps guide him through certain decisions. But I would have liked to seen them form a backstory a little bit more, just add a little bit more flesh on the bones in terms of her character.
Yeah, for
which
sure.
would have made it more impactful, especially at the end.
Yeah, I think you're kind of I was looking for that too. They give you like little snippets here and there.
Yeah. Like, come on, tell me something
like,
more about this girl. Does she have any siblings? If she doesn't, okay, that's fine.
What happened to her dad? Like, her dad is not around anymore, but they never go into what happened. Which we'll get into that more.
Yeah.
That's kind of something that comes up with other characters too. But
yeah.
Anyways, that's kind of a weakness there. So I would say for the most part, I have good things to say about this drama. Like it's up there with for me, it's up there in like the top three of probably 3 or 4 of dramas I've seen. As far as there's almost nothing that I can say. Like almost every drama, there's like something you like that was cheesy or that was unrealistic or it was okay, but this, and this. This one was pretty flawless as far as just the execution of the whole thing. It almost like wowed me and just like the script writing and the storytelling and all the characters.
Yeah.
So it was just really, really well done. And so anyways, that's what I would say just in general. Just really quickly, before we kind of end this spoiler-free video and go into our spoilers, some of the themes that you'll see in it, I would say, and then you can add to that, but well, first of all, just for rating purposes, for those of you who probably would like to know, as you know, we try to make sure that everything that we watch is is in line with our values, at least in some degree, and we try to be careful about the things that we watch, make sure that it's profitable for us as Christians. So from a rating point of view, I would say, like we said, there's no romance.
Yeah.
There's very little violence, so it's not going to be like the last one we watched, My Country, where you've got blood and swords and all that. I mean, it's just, it's a very different kind of show. There might be some cussing in it, but it's usually from characters that are kind of low-life characters, so they're not really seen in highlight, I would say.
Yeah.
Or they're in a low point in their life.
Yeah, there's barely anything.
But there's really, I don't know. I mean, I don't even really remember an instance of cussing. I'm just saying there may be at some point that... But anyways, I would say rating is, it's very profitable to watch. Okay, so themes, I think good themes in the show. One of the main themes I would say is integrity and perseverance. I think the main character is, in a certain sense, kind of reminds me a little bit of, if you've ever seen the movie High Noon, the black and white movie, or the movie Ghost in the Darkness. Totally different, like, setting here, obviously, with the baseball team and all that. But I think in a sense it's the same kind of story where it's like, this guy is here, and he's a man of integrity, and he's going to persevere through all odds and through everybody throwing everything at him that they can to get him to not accomplish his task. So in that way, it's a very like, it's about perseverance, it's about integrity, it's about like getting the job done, which is good. What would you add as a theme? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that for sure. He definitely has integrity in terms of, because I mean, there's certain situations where he has to make a decision. There's one instance where the best player on the team is, he's rumored to have been taking illegal drugs, performance-enhancing drugs to help him pitch better. And so they ask Bach, who's the GM, they said, okay, well, are you going to really, if he comes out positive for these drugs, are you going to let everybody know this, and you're going to lose your best player who you just traded for? And he's like, of course, and he basically is like, he's all about winning championships, but he's about winning, he's about winning honestly, and there's an integrity standard and principle that he goes by, which is refreshing. But what I will say is this: even though he does have integrity, he's not like a goody two shoes type of character, and there's certain flaws and certain weaknesses that he has. And one of the themes of the show that I like and that is very refreshing is that you're watching a reality, almost a reality show where all the characters are flawed in some way, and they all manifest sin in some way, and have weakness. And it's refreshing because some of those sports dramas that you watch, some of the movies and maybe some shows, there's always like a few characters that are just perfect. They do everything right and they can't do anything wrong and they have no flaws and everybody else just follows this person. But in this show, it shows you, the reality of living in a fallen world with sinners, and people make bad choices, and you see the consequences of those bad choices. And so it kind of shows like the need for redemption. In my point of view, there are no perfect characters in the show, and that's okay. And that's okay. I like shows like that. I like shows where it shows the flaws of these people and and different things that are going on. So yeah, I think one of the themes of the show is definitely the reality of sin in our world, and the reality of just as human beings we're flawed and we have weaknesses, and sometimes we make the wrong choices, poor choices, and there's consequences for that, which is biblical. But there's always redemption in Christ, and obviously that doesn't show that in this story, but you get a sense of, wow, okay, none of these characters are perfect. So
yes, and I think there's also and we'll get into more detail with these when we go into spoilers, but just overviewing, I think there's a theme of money and status is not really fulfilling.
Yes.
Ultimately, and we'll see that in multiple characters. Owning up to mistakes and second chances, like Grant already said.
Yeah.
Second chances is a big one too, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And owning up to mistakes, I think, is a big theme as well for several characters. And also, don't judge people too quickly. Because there's more sides to every story. Yeah. Wouldn't you say that's kind of a theme there?
Yes, that's definitely one of the highlights and one of the big themes of the show. Another theme is one of the themes I feel, especially with the GM, and I don't want to give too many specifics here, but trying to get over the poor choices of the past, and letting go and basically kind of persevering through sorrow and trying to get out on the other side. I mean, for the GM, he deals with a lot of sorrow and grief inside. He doesn't show it out. He doesn't manifest that out in his behavior. But there are a few things that have happened in his past that were very hurtful. He suffered loss, and he kind of holds on to that, and therefore he doesn't let anybody in, or he doesn't really kind of have any real relationships with people until he kind of gets over what he's done in the past and can move on from that. And I think that's real. That's something that we all kind of live with, regrets in the past, but how do we get over, and how do we persevere, through those regrets, the mistakes that we've made. And so, he has to learn that. He has to learn to kind of almost forgive himself in a way for certain things that have happened, to his family, and the responsibilities that he had, as an older brother and a son. So, it gets deep into his character, but I think that's one of the great things about the show, is kind of like, all right, there is forgiveness. There's a way to move on, even when you've made some mistakes and poor choices in the past. So.
All right.
Yep.
Well, that is the extent of our spoiler-free review, and we're gonna get into it in a little more detail. So if you have not seen it, we'd love for you to go and watch it, and then come hang out with us again as we talk about it in more detail.
Yeah.
You can find it on Kokoa.
Kokoa. Yes.
Spelled K-O... Let me make sure I said... Okay.
Yeah.
Kocowa.
Yeah.
Kokoa. There's a lot of good Korean content on Kokoa. So you can find it there. It's not on Netflix, unfortunately.
No.
But it is worth watching. So if you want
Yeah, and it's okay
try it
if
out
you're
there.
not into baseball. If you're not into
Still
baseball, it's okay
try it
because
out.
there's hardly any baseball being played in the entire show. There's only, maybe a handful of scenes where they're actually, playing a baseball game. And some of those
Yeah.
scenes are really good, but you don't have to like baseball to like this show.
For
It's
sure.
more about people, relationships, how do you deal with conflict, just different things. It's a real show. It's a it's it's centered around baseball, but the main themes are you know are there, and it's just not your cliche baseball show. So definitely go check it out. I highly recommend it, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, and then come hang out with us for our spoiler review.